In all the years I've been doing this, no trip has ever gone wrong at the destination. Not one. The destination is part of the plan. Trips go wrong in the middle. A fuel stop that closed 2 years ago. On a trail section that washed out in spring and nobody updated the map. At hour 6, when you realize the water you brought was just a guess, and that guess was wrong. Most people don't plan trips, they plan destinations. They know where they're going and roughly when they'll be back. Everything in between is a detail that they're just gonna figure out along the way. That gap is where almost every bad story I know comes from, including some of my own. So today, I'm gonna walk you through how I actually plan a trip, start to finish. 6 things, roughly in order, and the last one has almost nothing to do with the route at all, but it might be the one that could save your life. Quick thing before we start, because I want to set the expectation right. This is not about building some rigid itinerary where every hour is accounted for. I've been doing this for years. And one thing I know for sure is that trips never follow the plan exactly. And chasing that is just simply wasting energy. The plan has one job: keep problems from becoming emergencies. Problem on the trail is completely normal. That's the trail. Things are going to happen. An emergency is just a problem that you had no margin for. Everything I'm about to show you is just really about building margin. Fuel margin, water margin, time margin, information margin. And this kind of all starts with something most people think that they already did. You need to research your route like it changes between now and when you actually get there, because that's actually what happens. Trail information is perishable, and that's kind of what nobody tells you. That video that you just watched about a trail was filmed in somebody else's season, somebody else's year. Conditions move, gates close, snow hangs around longer than you thought it would. Wildfires can reroute things, and a washout could turn a 2-hour section into a dead end where there's no notification at the gate. So, very simply, when I research a trail, I'm not thinking about what is this trail like. I'm thinking about what it's like right now. Going on YouTube and watching a video from a trail 4 years ago doesn't really help. Recent trip reports beat everything, like days, weeks, months. Sometimes we're stretching it. You can go on forums, trail apps, more recent uploads on YouTube. I'm honestly just looking for the most current set of eyes that I can find on that trail in the most recent time frame. And if I can't find anything recent, that alone is information in itself. What that tells me is that I'm gonna go into something with less certainty, and I have to build out more margin because I'm not quite sure what to expect. Another call that I make that a lot of people miss is the land manager. Ranger district, BLM office, really whoever owns that ground. 2-minute call: is the trail open? Is there anything that I should know? Taking the time to do that is going to tell you more about a trail than really any app ever could. Here's one that sticks with me. I took my son to the Black Rock Playa, an ancient lake bed in the Nevada desert. It's the kind of place that you really just want to drive to the middle of, feel how big it is, feel how empty it is, and really listen to the silence. I checked it, I've been tracking it. It had been dry there for about 10 days. By all accounts, it was good to go. But when we got there, the mud was real. Not a little soft, it was real. The kind that going further is not a question of nerve, it's just a bad idea with no real upside. And I wanted that for him so bad. I wanted it for myself. I wanted to share that moment with him. But the playa didn't care what we wanted. 10 dry days in the forecast, and the ground still said no. So we turned around, we worked our way back to the shore, and we found a place to camp for the night. The trip I planned didn't happen, but the trip we got was still a pretty good one. Only because turning around was always on the table. One more thing while you're researching your route. Take a look at what's around you, not just on the route itself. Towns, fuel, cell coverage, any other roads that might be useful. I use Onyx Off-Road for this. I have it on my iPad. I always carry it with me wherever I go. I have no affiliation with them, but I've been using it for years, and it's always been pretty reliable. Oh, and always download the maps so that you have them if you're offline in the area that you're actually exploring. Now seriously though, take your time with this step because you're gonna need all this information for everything else we're about to talk about. Starting with the math that ends more trips than any breakdowns ever will. Here's the mistake that most people make. They calculate their fuel as if it were highway miles. It isn't even close. Low range, airing down, climbing, crawling, idling at obstacles, backtracking when you need to. Your real fuel economy on the trail can drop to almost half of what you actually get on pavement. And sometimes worse, depending on the type of terrain you're on and how much weight you're actually carrying. So the math I use looks like this. First, where is the last fuel that you can actually get before hitting the trail and starting your route? not a town nearby. Where is that actual fuel pump? That is mile 0. And you need to confirm that they're actually open, not just for business, but actually open during the hours that you're going to be going through there, because small towns can do some weird things. From there, total miles from that pump through the entire route until you can reach your next fuel spot. Again, confirmed open when you plan to arrive. Then, I figure that distance against my worst case fuel mileage, not my average, and whatever number that is, I want a meaningful reserve on top of that. Because the one thing I can guarantee you is that trip will not go exactly how you have it mapped out. There's going to be a detour, a campsite a little bit further that looks a little bit better. And sometimes you double back and have to run things twice. There's a number that's burned into me from my Mendocino trip. Fuel got tighter than it ever should have. My daughter was in the back seat, miles from anywhere we could get help. I've told that story before, but the only part that matters for this is that every fuel calculation that I've done since then has been built backward from that feeling. The math takes 5 minutes, and trust me, the alternative doesn't, and it makes you feel a whole heck of a lot worse. If the route is remote enough or long enough that it doesn't work specifically with your tank, that's what fuel cans are for. But notice the order. The math tells you how much fuel you're likely going to need, not just the habit of carrying extra fuel for no reason at all. In most cases for me, if it's even remotely close to threatening my fuel tank, I'm always going to bring extra fuel. There really isn't much harm in it other than a little bit of extra weight. And it might be the difference of me getting stranded and me making it home. By the way, quick question, and be honest in the comments. What's the lowest your tank has ever gotten on a trail? And was it part of the plan, or did something go wrong along the way that led it to getting too close for comfort? Mine was 21.5 gallons on a 22-gallon tank. And yeah, it's not a great feeling. But I think the answers are going to be split right down the middle, and I read everyone. Looking forward to that conversation. Anyway, fuel keeps your Jeep moving. The next thing is what keeps you alive, and most people actually just guess. Water is not an eyeball item, it's an actual calculation. You need to figure it per person, per day. And that number is going to absolutely move with different conditions. A mild forest run in the fall and a desert run in July are completely different trips and require completely different preparation. That heat can double what you actually go through. And that's even before you account for working harder than you expected. If you had to dig, if you had to winch, pulling a line, changing a tire, you never know what can happen. And then there's a rule that I never break anymore. I always pack my supplies for 1 day extra than I originally planned the trip for. 1 day buffer for food and water, and that's absolutely a minimum. It seems like I'm always bringing extra water home with me. That's why I always have these things laying around. And look, it's not because I expect to get stuck. It's because having that day's worth of buffer is what can turn a dangerous situation into a boring delay. Food is more forgiving, but generally follow the same principle. That buffer packing comes along on every trip, and the goal is to never touch it. Now, supplies are really only right if the conditions are what you expect them to be. Which brings me to the thing that everybody just checks once, moves on with their day, and forgets it ever happened. Here's the discipline that generally lacks in people. Decide what's going to cancel your trip before you ever leave that driveway. Not at the trailhead. At the trailhead, you've already driven 3 hours. You're standing there looking at a sky and telling yourself, it doesn't look that bad. And that little voice in your head is just kind of whispering, we didn't come all this way just to turn around. You're always going to negotiate the weather to protect the trip that you're absolutely excited about. Everyone does it. I've done it. That version of you at home is the only one who can make an honest call. So make it there and be ready for things to change. That forecast that you checked 5 days ago isn't a plan, it's a guess. What I actually watch is how things are trending as the trip gets closer. If you look at the weather day after day after day, what you might see is some rain that was forecasted and then it went away and then it came back. Then it went away and it moved to another day, but then the wind picked up and next thing you know, the rain's back in. But if you're not watching it every day, you're not going to see it. Is that window holding? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And I'm not just asking if the weather's going to be nice. I'm asking myself, if the weather changes, what does it do to the steps that I've already prepared? Bad weather is not always a deterrent, but understanding what it means is absolutely important. Heat rewrites the water math. We literally just talked about that. Rain can rewrite the entire route. Some trails just get wet. some turn to grease. And some water crossings may have been fine in the morning, but after the rain comes, you can't quite get back through. In the mountains, storms can literally change everything. I've seen snow in mountain passes on 90-degree days in July. It just doesn't make sense sometimes. It all comes down to what you're willing to take on and endure. If you know it's going to be bad out there and you go anyway, you better be prepared, because a forecast that's a minor inconvenience at home could be a trip ender when you're actually out there. That's the whole reason this decision needs to be made at home. Decide your limits where you still have a roof over your head and you can prepare for different scenarios. So the route's researched, the math is done, and the window's been judged honestly. The next one is something that I bet most people watching have never done or even considered. Before I leave, I know everywhere where I can bail off the trail early, and it's marked on the map, not in my head. Side roads out, shortcuts back to pavement, the nearest town in any direction during any point of the route. It takes 10 minutes, well, you already got your map open planning your route anyway, and it changes what every problem on the trail actually means. Now look, I know not every trail has an exit, but a lot of them do. So that knowledge is absolute power when you're out there. And here's what it buys you. When you're out there and something actually does go sideways, weather rolls in, something on the Jeep starts not acting right, somebody's hurt, or you're just way behind schedule and you want to make a change. The question is always the same. What is the fastest way to change my situation? If you know the exit, you have a choice. If you don't, it's a search. Probably on a bad day, possibly in the dark, and possibly with no signal. Same problem, two completely different experiences. Time is part of it too, and it's really worth just saying plainly. Trail miles are slow. Whatever you think a trail day covers, be honest about it. And know the exits for the sections that you're in case you're ever up against the clock. Be honest with me for a second. When's the last time you actually left a trail with your exits marked? And if you got a story where a bailout actually saved your trip, or maybe where not having one cost you, leave it in the comments. These stories teach this stuff way better than I ever can. Anyway, this brings us to our last piece. The one I said has nothing to do with the route. It works when almost everything else has failed, and skipping it is the single most common planning mistake I see. Somebody who is not on the trip needs to know exactly where you're going and exactly where you're going to be. Not, hey, I'm headed up north for a few days. The route, the vehicle, who's going to be there, when you're going to be out, and when you expect to check in. And the part that everybody leaves out is what to actually do when the check-in doesn't come through. If you don't hear from me by this time, here's who you need to call. And here's the information to give them. Written down, sent to them. Not described over a phone and you hope that they're going to remember it later. This is absolutely a safety margin. That last piece matters more than most people realize. Search and rescue will tell you the difference between a long search and a short one usually comes down to the information that they were provided about your whereabouts. And that information is not a hard thing to put together. If you're going anywhere remote, this is also where a satellite communicator can earn its place. And maybe you didn't notice, but this is the first piece of gear that I've mentioned this whole video. And that was on purpose. I personally use the Starlink Mini. It's reliable and it checks a lot of boxes for safety and simplicity. I have it here in this Veritas Vans mount that goes right on my roof with its little power box, and I can turn it on anytime I want. And unfortunately, I had to gain this urgency the hard way. But check-ins on the trail and a way to reach people when there's no signal can literally be the difference between life and death. Even all that gear doesn't replace information handoff. Electronics fail, batteries can die, devices maybe get left on your bumper somewhere and fall off. You never know. A person who knows your route and your timeline doesn't fail. Have both and trust the person. So let's look at what we actually built here. Current information instead of old information. Fuel margin, water margin. A weather decision before the trail could share its opinion. Exits you know about before you actually need them. And the ultimate backup plan, a person on the outside who knows exactly where you're going and when. None of it's complicated, but together, it's the difference between a trip where problems are just stories and a trip where your problems take the control. Here's what surprises people. This system is what actually allows you to relax out there. The most laid-back people I've ever shared the trail with are never the ones with the most insanely built rigs. They're the ones with the most margin. Margin is what lets you stop managing a trip and actually be on it. Now, if you want more resources on how to plan for a trip or how to build your Jeep the right way, I have them linked down in the description. Pick them up before your next trip, not after. Free, as always, down in the description. Now, planning decides what your trip needs. Packing is how I actually get everything in the Jeep. And there is a right way to do that. And that one's right here. Check it out next. Thanks for stopping by, Roam Nation. See you on the next one.